Message from Starfleet Command, top priority.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 141, featuring the top 5 unjustly accused storylines. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I'm Jim Moorhouse. I'm the host of the TrekRanks podcast, and tonight we are previewing the third season of Star Trek Lower Decks with a very apropos topic. It's the top 5 unjustly accused storylines, because the last time we saw the crew of the Cerritos, poor old Captain Freeman had been arrested for trying to blow up Pakled Planet, and we all know that she has been unjustly accused of that crime. So in honor, at least I hope she's been unjustly accused. So in honor of that great cliffhanger, we're doing a look back at unjustly accused storylines throughout Trek history. That's hard to say, by the way. So I'm going to say it as many times as I can. Unjustly accused does not roll off the tongue. And for this topic, we have two great guests. First up, returning for his 8th appearance on TrekRanks, hailing us from Starbase Tucson, it's our good friend, Judge Advocate Matt Hansen.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's good to be back. I didn't realize this was the 8th time, and actually, I'll just make a little correction here. I've transferred to the Yuma sector now. So.
Oh, you're in the Yuma sector. Okay, all right. No more Starbase Tucson.
I know. It's a little bit quieter here, but I have my place to myself, which is all good. And may I suggest, if unjustly accused is not easy to roll off the tongue, how about falsely accused?
Yeah, I found myself saying that many times, falsely accused sometimes, and I was like, no, I'm going to stick with the unjustly.
Okay.
Because sometimes, I'll tell you, and this will come with my prime directive, sometimes you're not falsely accused, but you are unjustly accused. Like, you may have done it, but it wasn't unjust, as opposed to falsely. So there was a couple of times where I was looking at a pic and I was like, well, he did it, and he's being unjustly accused, but he did it, but he's still unjustly accused. Anyway,
very interesting.
A fine line. And glad to hear you're in Yuma. I knew that. I just forgot. Okay. Our other guest is my favorite, Ross Webster. His 5th appearance, coming to us via subspace from the England Expanse. He's one of our favorite wordsmiths and co-hosts of the Snap Trek podcast. Ross Webster. I can't talk.
Hello, Jim. Hello, Matt. Nice to be back.
Great to have you back on. All right, we already did a little bit. Let's get into our TrekRanks recalibration so we can get deeper into this fun topic.
What are you recalibrating?
Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
Regular listeners will know by now, general order number 1 of the TrekRanks charter is that we love Trek and we love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started. And remember, it's not about the ranks. That's just our excuse to talk about Star Trek, because as Mr. Spock himself has said, our show is all about
infinite diversity in infinite combinations, symbolizing the elements that create truth and beauty.
No wrong answer. It's not about being right or definitive in any way. It's about sharing the things we love about Trek, and we love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise, the Kelvin timeline, now Discovery, and Short Treks, and Star Trek Picard, and Lower Decks, and Strange New Worlds, and Prodigy. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through 853 episodes of Star Trek, which currently translates to the complete first season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And like we said, this is our preview episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek Lower Decks. And one final reminder, we use episodes as our shorthand term, but the 13 films are always in play as well.
Have boosted power to the communications bandwidth.
We appreciate that, Mr. Kim. You can find TrekRanks on Subspace at TrekRanks.com. You can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. You can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. Okay, Matt and Ross, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you on Subspace. Matt.
You guys can get a hold of me at mhansen0207 on Twitter, where I talk about all kinds of things. Jim noted before we started the podcast, I've been on a politics rant lately, but I'm not all politics. I'm mostly nerdy stuff, Star Trek, Marvel, horror movies. I'm more fun than I'm not.
I love it. Ross, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter as well, to Borg at STRTRK1701, or you can find my podcast Snaptrek at Snaptrek, also on Twitter.
Lots of creative stuff on those two Twitter handles. Trust me, you want to follow them. Okay, I think for this topic, we can skip our diagnostic cycle. We're going to jump straight into our prime directives.
But what you're proposing is exactly the kind of tampering the prime directive prohibits.
Okay, so before we get started, just a quick note that I think, as a lot of topics on TrekRanks, unjustly accused storylines can actually mean a lot of different things. So it could be a legal challenge against someone, or maybe something smaller and more personal about someone challenging someone's reputation or something. I don't know. Just seems like this is the kind of topic where once you dive into it, you can find different ways to define your list, like we talked about with maybe the very subtle differences between falsely accused and unjustly accused. So with that in mind, Matt, how did you define your prime directive and finalize your picks?
So as your listeners may or may not remember, I was on the TrekRanks top 5 courtroom episodes. So of course, whenever there's talking about being accused of a crime or crime in general, Jim always thinks of me apparently as the first because I'm a lawyer. But that being said, I chose 5 different ones than my courtroom appearances. And I will note that only 2 of them have anything to do with a courtroom or a tribunal.
Okay, interesting. Did somebody just say tribunal? Hit the gong. All right. By the way, that was episode number 49 when we did that top 5 courtroom showdowns. So that was a long, long time ago, almost 100 episodes, which is crazy to think of. So, okay, Ross, how about you?
So I was very conscious that this was also a question of scale, and you could have these really big, meaty courtroom dramas, which were the entire episode, or you could have much smaller scale, sort of scene-based back and forths. And I wanted to sort of have that whole range. So I'm quite conscious that I've only picked one biggie, which I imagine will have come up in your courtroom episode, number 49. But I had a big range. And I really just, the idea that somebody was saying something that wasn't true, and then they were sort of put back down for it.
I like that. I knew this is a real broad topic. There's big ways to look at it and small ways. All right, so for my prime directive, it's a little more complicated than normal for me. So first, I did the same thing as Matt. I looked back. I was on that courtroom show, by the way, too. I looked back at episode 49, and I discounted I took out all my courtroom showdown picks. So I made sure I did not pick any of those again. And then I started to, by the way, only a couple of those even probably would have crossed over. So, and then from there, I started just brainstorming, and I realized I didn't want to get too clever with it once I started thinking about some of those broader ways to look at it. And I wanted all of my picks to be episodes that really were about a hero character being accused of something in a direct and incorrect way as a big major plot point. So there's really no doubt that they are unjustly accused. So I did end up using that as my narrow down to make it big moments of being unjustly accused and not those smaller moments that of which there are many. So very cut and dried traditional picks for me for my unjustly accused storyline. I'm getting better at that. Okay, let's do it. First Cadet Catan, introduce us to the new order of things.
It'll be alphas like us that determine the future of this quadrant. That will be the new order of things.
Thank you, First Cadet Catan. As always, just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, everyone will start with their 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease their pick, and we'll each reveal our unjustly accused storyline and the specific reasons we're highlighting it. And of course, everyone will pick an episode to associate it with, because it might be an unjustly accused storyline that goes across more than one episode. And in the end, we'll ask everyone for a few secondary system selections for the picks that just missed our list. And as always, if you have any duplicate picks, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Matthew, we're going to start with you. What's your number 5 pick for your top 5 unjustly accused storylines?
So as listeners may or may not remember, one of my favorite, and I think it was my number 1 when I was on Courtroom Dramas, was Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. It's my favorite Star Trek movie. It's just a brilliant political thriller storyline with a perfect unjustly accused factor. But since that was on my first one, I wanted to steer clear of that. But then I thought that storylines happens again later in a Star Trek episode, and in a pretty good one too. So my 5 words and the hashtag are Archer, the Battlecruiser Enterprise, hashtag the Rediscovered Country, and this would be Enterprise Season 2 Judgment.
I love it. I love it. It really is kind of it's an homage to that episode. By the way, that was on my list, so I can't pick it. So maybe we're just going to trade picks this time. Who knows? What were your takeaways from it, Matt, that made you pick it?
It was basically having my cake and eating it too. So Star Trek VI is still represented here as my favorite movie. But this is actually a really good homage to it. And I love the fact that you get the homage to Star Trek VI. You have J.G. Hertzler coming back as Archer's advocate. I love storylines like this and a few other ones like Matter of Perspective or Rules of Engagement, where you see things replayed by people who are potentially unreliable narrators. Mm-hmm. So you see different points of view. And it's just a fun one. I really like this one. I
love it. You know, my favorite thing about it is the thread of Duras all the way through a bunch of episodes that lead up to this. And then they even more after this too. I love that Duras thread. Ross, what's your take on Judgment?
Yeah, this was definitely one I considered. It has that sort of courtroom aspect. And the fact it tied so nicely to Star Trek VI was up there in my thought process. I think what was great about it for me was the fact they bothered to go back to Rura Penthe as well. Yes. It wasn't just the courtroom. They went all the way back to the prison planet as well. And then they leave J.G. Hertzler there. That was the bit that sort of blew my mind at the end. I was like, what? He's there? Okay, fine. He's staying.
Yeah, they sure did. When they went to Rura Penthe, I was like in that mode of like, are they this is gonna be like a 2-parter? And then it was like all over in like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's a great episode. I love it. And it was on my courtroom list. Okay, Ross, what's your number 5 pick?
Okay, number 5. Spied haraming / spider farming. Hashtag hope, ho, and fear. This is Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 1, where Boimler accuses Mariner of providing weapons to the Galadonian farmers.
Oh my God.
The pilot, right?
It is a shovel and hoe. Yes.
Yes. Pilot. Second Contact. Oh, so good.
And this doesn't seem, it's actually bigger than a throwaway moment. The scene is quite quick. It plays out for the rest of the episode that they're annoyed at each other. But then this idea of side quests and personal missions and Boimler getting involved as well, that's a thread that comes back all the way through the 2 seasons. And it's nice that it started right here in the very first episode, like almost at the beginning of it. And it was the first thing that came to my mind, the accusation that she was supplying weapons, when of course she wouldn't. She's a Starfleet officer. She's just trying to help out in a practical way with a shovel and a hoe.
Don't jump out at people, for real, man. You're lucky I didn't phaser you.
You're selling Federation weapons to these guys, aren't you?
Yo, calm down.
No! I'm sick of you pushing me around. Explain yourself right here.
Boims, you need to shut up. Listen to me. You know nothing. Shut your mouth.
We're just gonna take off. Nobody move! Selling Starfleet technology without the express consent of the Federation Council is a breach of Regulations 498 and 756.
And Regulations 25, 15, 348. You're breaking 76 just for pointing that phaser at me.
Fine. You know more regulations than me. I still have to stop you.
It's farm equipment, you idiot. They're farmers.
I'm not an idiot! You expect me to believe that... Shovel and hoe.
I love this pick. I love it so much. It really was... I just love these Galadorians and the whole way that they set this up and make it part of the whole storyline for that episode. Because if you broke it down like how it's defined, I think the main plot of this episode is that challengement. He unjustly accused her of supplying weapons. I love it. So smart.
And he breaks a lot of regulations doing so.
True. Matt, what's your take on this one?
I love it. You know what? It's funny, Jim. You and I have done this. Obviously, Ross has been on here for a long time. We've been drawing from different aspects of Trek. I still am like trying to remember these aspects of new Trek simply because they've not stuck in my brain as long as the other stuff that I've been watching for most of my life. So I didn't even think of this, but it's great. It not only is it an unjustly accused storyline, I think it's a brilliant way of setting up the character dynamics of the show. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is going to be something special.
Yeah, this is really a great launch for it. And that's it's starting to happen more, Matt. I know exactly what you're talking about, where we've all lived with the Legacy series so much that it's just second nature, and these things are in your headspace when a topic comes up. But it's happening more and more now, where Discovery, Lower Decks, and things are coming
every
up.
time I've been on, I've been trying to like actively think of what's something from New Trek that I can include, because I love it. I just have to let it marinate in my head more, because I've had the other stuff I've had for like 20 some years.
Okay, let's go to my round 5 pick. Oh man, this is something else. So by no means is this a great episode of Star Trek. And honestly, part of the reason I'm picking it is that not only has this episode never been picked on TrekRanks previously, I am very confident that the title of this episode has never been mentioned on an episode of TrekRanks ever in 140 episodes. So here we go. Number 5, 5 words in a hashtag. Tuvok is on the case, hashtag, a case solved by the dog, and it is Voyager Season 1, Episode 8, Ex Post Facto, where Tom Paris is unjustly accused of the murder of some bird-coiffed alien with feathers in their hair, and these guys punish crimes by making the perpetrators relive the crime from their victims' eyes every 14 hours, which is a pretty cool concept. The way they set this up and showcase it. The episode's got this pretty cool film noir. I mean, listen, there's a lot of goofy things about this episode, but there's also some good things. So it's got a film noir kind of aspect with some black and white mixed in on when you're doing the flashbacks for the murder. I love that. It's our first real Tuvok episode where he investigates a murder, something that actually happens like 3 or 4 times on Voyager, which is shocking in and of itself. I love the guest actress, Robin McKee. I had a huge crush on her. I love that the dog gives away the murderer. Nika, the little cute dog. And the ending is actually pretty cool, but no one ever remembers, where you see this code and these words on the visual out of Tom's eyes that are embedded in the memory engrams and his punishment. And that turns out to be like a message that he was supposed to relay to another warring faction of the Banayans and the Numeri. Can't remember which ones got the feathers for hair. But anyway, it's something. I mean, the worst thing about this episode is that it's a really tired trope of the old disinterested scientist with the demure, unsatisfied wife at home, which we see like a half a dozen times in Trek as well. But like a matter of perspective, we'll always have Paris second sight. There's a whole bunch of them. But ex post facto, after the fact, it's a legal term. Matt, you're probably familiar with it. What's your take?
Well, it's
an episode of Star Trek.
Yes, it is. Honestly, not one of my favorites. I've softened a little bit since I recorded my review of it on the Delta Quadrant when I was 22. But
like 2 years ago.
Yeah, really. There are aspects that I like about it. It is pretty much, though, matter of perspective, copy paste. I mean, it's the same storyline of the wife and the disaffected scientist and being falsely accused.
What are you talking about? These are memory engrams, not a holodeck. God, what are you talking?
The concept that I like, the punishment of flashing back, it's really overplayed in the episode, to the point where I get tired of seeing the flashback. But
that's part of the episode, man.
I guess.
Listen, you don't need to. It's ranked 140 on TrekRanks, so
you know what? I'll end with something nice that has nothing to do with the main plot of the episode. I do like the scene where they let Chakotay be a Maquis and use the tricks against the Numeri in the battle. That's my favorite scene.
Oh yeah, okay. There's some good space battles left at the end there. All right, Ross, what's your take? We've spent too much time on ex post facto. All right.
So I've just made a note to compare matter of perspective and ex post facto on an episode of Snap Trek. I think that would really work. That's such a good idea.
Yes.
Naming no other episodes, I felt that Tom Paris gets a lot of unjust accusations, and this was definitely one I thought of, but I favoured another.
Okay.
But we may or may not talk about that later.
I love it. That's fantastic. All right, ex post facto has been mentioned on TrekRanks for the first time. Let's do it. Round 4, Matt. What should you pick?
So we're going to stick with Voyager a little bit. And like I said, I tried to move away from just courtroom dramas to Unjustly Accused. And in this case, a confusing Unjustly Accused, but it all gets worked out in the end. So many star dates, so little time. #7 of QAnon. This is the Voyager conspiracy.
Okay, that's
good.
Smart. I didn't think of this one, but yes, there's Unjustly Accused happening all over the place.
All over the place. And you know what? Like the best wacky conspiracy theories, it almost makes sense until you actually think about it. But I love the concept of going back and, was it this all along? And I say so many star dates, so little time, because she just 7 of 9 just rattles off each star date as if that whatever happened on that date proves something. But it has a really nice touching ending. And like I said, this is Unjustly Accused without having it be a big courtroom drama. It's a personal episode. And I think one that kind of ggets overlooked. So that's my number 4, the Voyager conspiracy.
I love it. This one's it's a great episode. It's super complicated, complex. It's one of those episodes that I love because it has so many layers that even though I've seen it, probably 50 times, you always kind of see something different or see it in a different way every time. Ross, what's your take on the Voyager conspiracy?
I think this is a great pick, and not one that I thought of at all, but it is just throwing out accusations left and right. One thing that always sticks with me is all the scenes where Seven's asleep and then she opens her eyes and wakes up and then she's off to tell somebody about the conspiracy. Right. And she's telling so many people what's going on. She almost can't keep track. And of course, they're all talking to each other about the conspiracies. It's a bit crazy, but it is very funny and interesting to watch. It's a good pick.
That is a great take on it.
To the point 6 years in where they start questioning each other.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really know where it's going. That's another great thing about the episode. You really have no idea where it's going. Like who's right, who's wrong.
I did like that Chakotay and Janeway didn't instantly start picking at each other. The first, I think it was like the second conversation they had. They talked about it, and the air was cleared very quickly.
Yeah,
must be something wrong with Seven. We're not doing this to each other.
Exactly. That's they didn't fall into that trope. Okay, Ross, what is your number 4 pick?
Oh yeah, I'm afraid for this one, both of you are going to recognise the episode immediately because it definitely will have come back from episode 49, I'm sure.
Okay.
5 words and a hashtag. Cardassian courting chief. Hashtag O'Brien testifying. And of course, this is Deep Space Nine's tribunal, which I'm sure you've discussed at length in the previous episode.
Bang the gong, we got tribunal. So here's something funny. Shockingly, Ross, I did look this up, and we've just banged the tribunal gong because it had to be picked in this episode. But nobody picked tribunal in our top 5 courtroom showdowns.
I don't believe it.
And maybe it's because it was a little...
I think it was too obvious.
Well, it's not that it's so obvious. Listen, that always happens in TrekRanks. You always had the fear of missing something big because there's so many options, and there's no wrong answers. But maybe because it was such an open and shut case. Anyway, you talk about it, and then we'll get into it, because tribunal... There's no way this episode was going to pass without somebody picking tribunal. That's for sure.
This is my big courtroom moment.
Big one,
I knew I wanted
of course
one.
It is. Yeah.
So this is it. Confused, abused, accused, but ultimately excused. He gets away with it because he didn't do anything. And the joy of this episode is watching O'Brien sort of stifle through, not knowing. It's very Kafkaesque. He's on trial. He has no idea what for. He can't fathom any of the processes or protocols. He's reliant on people who look incredibly unreliable. And apart from the fact it's very brutal and very serious, it's almost hilarious. I love the moment where Ode steps in as Nestor and sort of plays his card as a member of the Cardassian court. I thought it was a real power move. And the guy who plays the prosecutor,
Fritz Weaver,
Kovat, he's hilarious.
He's so good.
I'd watch him 100 times.
Well, the funny thing is he's supposed to be the defense attorney.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a
legendary actor. So good. You're right about the tone. It's really interesting. It has a mixed tone that works in a weird way because it is serious and it is dangerous, but there's also this kind of almost farcical tone.
Exactly.
Like when they have the reverse Miranda rights. You have the right to refuse to answer questions, but such refusal can be inferred as a sign of guilt. It's so great.
No, you know what it is? It's kind of got this Dr. Strangelove sort of dark comedy vibe that I always really like. Because basically, as a lawyer, I gotta love the prosecutor, not the prosecutor, the defense attorney. He's supposed to be the defense attorney, and yet he's like apologizing to the court because O'Brien dared speak up.
O'Brien's innocence. If O'Brien is accused of stealing warheads from Deep Space Nine, we can prove that he didn't do it.
Of course he did it. He's been found guilty, hasn't
Someone manipulated a recording of his voice to gain entry. I can produce that recording here.
No evidence can be submitted after the verdict has been reached. You should know that.
Of course. But I was hoping that the most renowned conservator in all of Cardassia...
You flatter me, sir. You flatter me. But we want justice. Not chaos in this court. No, I will have no part of this.
Enough.
The other part that I love is just the judge just getting so annoyed with Odo. It's like, this is the longest trial we've ever had. It's just great. Yes, it's dark. Yes, it's foreboding. But for an O'Brien torture episode, I get a real kick out of this one.
No, you nailed it. It is absolutely Dr. Strangelove, because Dr. Strangelove is dark and scary and terrifying, but it's one of the funniest movies ever made. I mean, it's brilliant. Wow, that's so good. Wait, so Ross, your 5 words was not abused, accused, and ultimately excused, because that's one of the best things I've ever heard.
No, it wasn't. I was fooling around with it, and I've kept it in my notes. And then then it came out.
That's so good. Ross, do you have anything else you want to add on it? Because I know I kind of cut you off.
Yeah, just those creepy kids tapping their chairs. That's horrible, isn't it?
Wait, were they actually? I don't remember them tapping their.
They're doing something. They're making some little sound with their fingers, aren't they?
Oh my god! Okay, I didn't even. I mean, that whole family thing that was sitting there was really creepy.
Now I'm going to go back and see what they're doing. They're doing something really weird. The kids are sitting there making a little movement of some sort. I'm sure it's tapping their chair arms, but I'm going to check.
It's so good. Well, I'll add to that. I like the ending. I like the out on this episode, because sometimes you're not sure how it's going to end, or if it's going to be a week out. But I think it's great. Cisco shows up and they're like, okay, you're guilty, but we're going to let you go home.
As a gesture of goodwill.
I love it. Let us say that we're not merciful, you know?
And then the great opening of the whole trial is, this is the accusation. The sentence is death. Let the trial begin. So good. Okay, excellent pick by Ross. Let's go to my round 4 pick. Another episode that is a first-time pick for me ever on TrekRanks, and it's only been picked one time before on the show. 5 words and a hashtag. Be careful of their wicked smiles, hashtag their shining yellow eyes. And it is Detained from Enterprise Season 1. The innocent Suliban are unjustly accused, and they're put into an internment camp, aka Detention Complex 26. And I love this episode. It's an underrated little gem that all the Suliban are rounded up. They're sent to a detention center, and the Tandarans, who of course is played by the dastardly Dean Stockwell, Scott Bakula's buddy from Quantum Leap. And they're trying to eradicate the cabal, and they've accused all Sulibans of being part of it, when we're learning kind of for the first time, oh, it's not all Sulibans. It's just branded them all as terrorists when that's not the case. So, and my 5 words in the hashtag was this cool Tandoran nursery rhyme.
You believed I was a member of the Cabal, didn't you?
Didn't you?
Yes, I did. All that seems to matter is the way we look. Be careful of their wicked smiles, their shining yellow eyes. At night, they'll squeeze right through your door, and everybody dies. The Tandaran children used to tease my daughter with that nursery rhyme. At least here, she doesn't have to hear it anymore.
This is an internment camp.
Detention complex 26.
Great Suliban backstory. Detained. Really, really cool episode. Matt, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, this is another one that people forget. I even forget because it's couched toward the latter half of season 1. But when you think about it, this episode came out in 2002. It was probably made toward the end of 2001. And like all good Star Trek, it comments on the times because 9/11 had just happened, and the tendency in this country was to lump all Muslims together in this terrorist Al-Qaeda group. And of course, they're not that. So I think this episode carries on the proud tradition of commenting on the times.
Yeah, it really is a play off of the response to 9/11, which, of course, it's a weird thing. We haven't talked much about this, but, they kind of called the Suliban the Cabal before 9/11.
Right.
That was like a word that they chose to use in their description of their kind of their faction. And then all of a sudden after 9/11, when Broken Bow's coming out, the word Cabal's everywhere.
Well, not just that. I if I'm not mistaken, I believe they got the name Suliban from the Taliban.
Oh yeah, and that too is, of course, a little less obvious, but yes, that too. So very interesting that all of that happened, and then 9/11 happened, and then Broken Bow came out. And it was kind of part and parcel with the show. So, any take on Detained and the Unjustly Accused Suliban, Ross?
I thought this, because you're right, it's not an episode that immediately springs to mind when you think of the Suliban. But what I always thought was, with the Klingons are always the same until TNG, and then they're a bit different, and then occasionally you get the odd different Klingon. Whereas they set out to make the Suliban a diffuse group. Right. There are some people doing this and some people doing that. That's a really clever thing to do. And actually, I'm quite disappointed that we lost the Suliban as villains or characters in the remainder of the last 2 series of Enterprise. Because I thought they did a fantastic job of making them something creepy and disturbing, yet or familiar as well, and sort of equivalent, especially with Silic as a sort of a comparator to Archer. So I absolutely loved it. And I did also enjoy seeing Dean Stockwell. I thought it was a bit of a shame he wasn't a hologram, but I thought that maybe that would have been a touch on the nose. But, no, nothing's perfect.
I like that word equivalent. That's a really good, they felt like equivalent in terms of like a villain. Mm-hmm. Like they were just really evenly matched. I love the Suliban. I won't say I'm disappointed. I do think the arc, everything I would love to have gotten more out of them, but I was pretty satisfied with those first 2 seasons, and then the kind of quick way they rounded it all up in Stormfront at the beginning of season 4.
Well, as Spock said, there are always possibilities. So who says they can't show up in 900 years in the future on Discovery or even somewhere in Strange New Worlds?
Absolutely.
We did get a Suliban reference in Lower Decks.
True.
There is a photo of a Suliban on Mariner's conspiracy.
Yes, there is.
In Cupid's errant arrow. I've thought of it. Okay. Anyway, didn't think I was going to come up with that title. Okay, round 3. It's the soup round. Matt, what's your number 3 pick?
Eat your soup, courtesy of a loyal establishment. Jolan True.
So I guess I will narrow it down to a single episode, although I'm talking about a much larger storyline.
Yes, you will, because that's what we do.
And again, trying to bring in some new Trek into my my rankings here. I thought this was just brilliantly handled and such a good continuation. My 5 words and a hashtag are "Synths are not the enemy," hashtag "Synths rights now." I guess I'll call it Star Trek Picard Remembrance, but I put it on my list as basically Star Trek Picard Season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's a great thought.
Because, I mean, the whole arc centers around these synths being, yes, they did it, but they're unjustly accused. It's like you said, Jim. They did it, but they were reprogrammed. It's not their fault. And yes. I think it was just a great way of not only continuing the synth/android artificial life arc from previous Star Trek series. This season finally made me okay with Nemesis. Like, I still don't like Star Trek Nemesis, but the way that they wrapped up some of the lingering storylines, including what I think is a much better death scene for Data, made me love the series. I mean, right now for me, in terms of new Trek, Strange New Worlds and Picard are neck and neck for me as my favorite of the new Trek stuff.
Yeah, I love this pick. By the way, I think we're probably on the same page in terms of new Trek. I think it's a really smart pick. I think what they did with the synths and that whole storyline, I loved it in Picard. I love the kind of Romulan angle of this, where they had this aversion to any kind of artificial intelligence being put forth and being put out there, and the whole Jat Vash angle. I really like that part.
It played right into the Federation spheres too, because I mean, for as much as they made progress, they only recognized Data alone as a person. They still had a vast distrust of artificial intelligence, so it played right into their hands.
Yep. No, really, really smart pick. I love it. Ross, what's your take on Remembrance in that Picard Season 1 Unjustly Accused storyline of the synths and poor Soji and Dodge?
I think people have had more trust in the synths if they didn't look so terrifyingly creepy. Like, they made them look like Slender Man in red jumpsuits, so they're petrifying. And they are funny. I have to say, I enjoyed seeing the synths. And I was disappointed that I feel like we make a lot of, not disappointed, that's the wrong word, but we make a lot of strides in terms of recognizing Data, to an extent recognizing the Doctor as artificial life forms. Yet we still haven't pushed the boundary of treating some creatures like slaves, or where's the cutoff line? When can they become something more? And I thought it was a really interesting take to have them there and then completely gone because they've been overrun by the Romulans and managed by the Romulans. So I really liked seeing the synths, and I liked how it played out into the Riker Troy storyline as well, that because there was no synthetics, that negatively impacted their lives in a roundabout way. Yeah, I really thought that was a clever and horrible twist. And they were unjustly accused. The synths didn't do it. They were overtaken. And, if when Data gets overtaken, we can say, oh, somebody else did that to you, when
you could be brainwashed.
Yeah, exactly. It happens to Dr. Jurati. She's brainwashed. She does something terrible, and she's forgiven. But it's a whole semi-race, so we don't regard them as a race because we constructed them. Anyway, lots to talk about.
And isn't that human nature, Ross? I mean, we can say, you have prejudice against the race, but, Data, the Doctor, oh no, you're one of the good ones.
Yeah,
we're not talking about
God, you. That is horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, and that subtlety is there. It's through TNG, and then it's there in these deep layers of the Picard storyline. So it's really well done. That's a great pick. I never would have thought of that. I love it. That's good outside the box. Okay, Ross, how about you? What's your super round pick?
So I'm going for my biggest one. This is my smallest one.
Okay.
This is my smallest unjust accusation. Neurologically needled examinee needlessly needles. # flog them as well. And this is the scene in Voyager's Scientific Method where Janeway accuses the crew of laziness and spending more time in the holodeck than on duty. And she's angry at Tuvok for not doing enough to manage the situation. And Tuvok very calmly and very dryly sets the situation down, calms her down a little bit, and then says he'll go for a glass of wine with her in the Da Vinci hologram scenario. And it's just such a out of character moment for her. But then you see all the needles jammed into her head, and it's quite hideous and horrifying. But it's just her snappiness and her anger, but it's just one quick moment of accusation, which is quickly put to bed.
Wow, that is small, but so great. That's why this topic, I love it, because she absolutely is letting her, she's being unduly influenced as well in making her unjust accusation, but nevertheless, that's why, but she does it. And the Tuvok utters one of the great lines in Star Trek history. Yes. Shall I flog them as well? Which was your hashtag. I love it. Matt, what's your take on scientific method? Is such a great
that line from Tuvok is the one funny line in the episode, because that episode is creepy. The thought of being experimented on and you have no idea that you're even being experimented on is just creepy. Like, it reminds me of Schisms from TNG, where they keep getting abducted in the middle of the night to get experimented on. Jim knows me. I love good horror stuff, and this was definitely some good body horror.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will say that it's funny. The worst of all the different things they show, there's a lot of bad ones. The one that creeps me out the most is Janeway's.
Yeah,
where they're just like that thing's on her head, and it's like nothing worse than a headache. And it's, they're poking stuff into her brain. It's
a psychological attack too, because they're trying to push her over the edge.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because they're affecting her mental state.
Yeah, it's hideous. And the bit for me is when Seven's in the lift, and then she stood there and can't move. She can't give the game away that they're in there with her, and they come right up to her and they push something into her eye.
Right.
And she can't move. This is hideous.
And I love it still that this is still early enough in season 4 where Seven's a new character, so they still don't entirely trust her.
Yeah.
But it's great.
It's so good.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to do a quick temporal causality loop. I've been working on some advanced TrekRanks lists, and you won't see this coming, so I'm not worried about spoilers. Scientific method is going to be my number one pick for a topic coming up here in the next 4 or 5 episodes.
Ooh.
I can't wait for it. So we're going to talk about it again. Okay, that's coming. Here we go. My super round pick number 3. This is unbelievable. You guys are not going to believe this. This is for everyone listening who's ever listened to this show at any great length. This is the most shocking statistic in the history of TrekRanks. I can't believe what I'm about to say. So this is the first time that this episode has ever been picked on TrekRanks. And I looked it up because I've got this trend going. I was trying to go deep. So I wanted to make sure that to see if I had picked it. I had not. But turns out nobody has ever picked it this episode. You won't believe it. 5 words and a hashtag. What you're about to see, hashtag, is graphic and disturbing. It is Voyager, Season 4, Episode 23, Living Witness. And it is the unjust accusation of the entire warship Voyager and the evil, not EMH, but the evil android, the doctor, who's accused of being an android in this historical recreation. And this episode, it's so good. I cannot believe this has never come up on TrekRanks. So I just love it. The story they're telling is 300 soldiers, triple armored hull, 30 torpedo tubes, 25 phaser banks, Kazon crew members, squadron of Borg on board to do their dirty work. The doctor's an android. You got it's 700 years in the future with these Kyrians versus the Baskins, and just a really, really clever episode. It's a great way to do kind of a mirror universe episode of Voyager with the evil Captain Janeway leading the charge. But why this episode I think resonates is there's this extra layer on this episode of when they come back to the future and there's this museum and they're telling the history, and the Vaskins and Kyrians are living together, but the Kyrians are accusing the Vaskins of basically trying to commit genocide and wipe them out, and the Vaskins are still the dominant race, and the Kyrians are trying to gain status, which is something you see a lot, and just trying to kind of erase some stigmatism that certain cultures have to live with because of the way that they're represented. And these guys have been ostracized and oppressed for 700 years. It's a really interesting layer that they have kind of on top of this episode. It's really, really cool.
I've confirmed that this is the same tricorder I used to scan Tedrin at the moment of his death. If I can access the bioreadings inside, I can prove that he was killed by a Vaskin weapon, not by Captain Janeway.
Can this be done? I've been trying to decipher the instrument for years, but with the doctor's help.
I fail to see what this would prove. Tedrin died on Voyager, a victim of a conspiracy to oppress my people. The weapon used, who fired it, this is all beside the point.
Was there a conspiracy? Did Voyager really help my ancestors to start the Great War? Or were Kyrians the aggressors, as my people have always believed? Now, this casts doubt on everything.
But it doesn't change the fact that my children can't attend the same academies as yours, or that we are forced to live outside of the city center.
Today's problems are not at issue here. This is about history.
Look, I don't know who started your war. All I'm saying is that Voyager wasn't responsible.
So, and then the doctor shows up and kind of sets it all straight and then leaves, and Kyrians suck. So there you go. Living witness for the first time on TrekRanks. Ross, what's your take on that?
So this honestly was one of my cuts from this list. So I had this thought, but I was convinced people must be talking about this all the time. So I was agog when you said it's never been picked before. I can't believe that.
Truly amazing. Truly amazing.
I think this is one of the funnest episodes of Star Trek. I love the weird storytelling dynamic where you're hearing about something that didn't happen from 700 years. And then at the end, they flick to the next 700 years and you find out how that story concluded and how that's being perceived. And I'm convinced we're going to find out what happened to that second version of the Doctor at some point. I'm convinced.
I love that. It could easily happen. Matt, what's your take?
I gotta say, this was such an obvious pick and I had no idea. I didn't even think of it. But no, this is great. And I gotta say, just watching the Warship Voyager scenes, Voyager never had a Mirror Universe episode, but I consider this the closest to a Mirror Universe episode that we're ever going to get. And not for nothing, so the Doctor comes back, sets the record straight, and then doesn't he stay there for like another century or something?
Yeah.
So, and then sets a course for back for home. So I'm just saying, producers...
It's like 900 years. So
I'm just saying, producers, Robert Picardo in Star Trek Discovery, I'd be down for that.
It'd be pretty cool. It would be pretty cool. It could easily happen. That'd be an easy story to tell. And I will say this is who's who of Star Trek writers. It's Brian Fuller, Brandon Bragg, and Joe Menosky all have credits. And it was directed by Tim Russ, which is kind of cool.
Really?
I had forgotten about that. Yeah. So really well done. Just powerful, smart, interesting episode that somehow has never been talked about on TrekRanks until now. So crazy. Okay, let's go to round 2. Matt, what do you got?
So with round 2, this is my other one that's technically a courtroom episode, but it's not one that I picked last time. And it might actually, I have to think about it, but it might actually be my favorite episode of Next Generation, if not my favorite moral episode of Next Generation. And my 5 words and a hashtag are bigger men than you, Picard, hashtag Admiral Satie McCarthy. This is the drumhead from season 4.
Amazing.
Basically, everybody's accusing everybody. It's a Federation witch hunt. And like Star Trek 6 plays into my love of political thrillers, this plays into my love of these tribunals that just accuse people unjustly. I think one of my favorite things that I read in high school growing up was The Crucible. I love storylines where fear and paranoia turns into zealousy and outrageousness. And it's so easy to make that step. And the whole conclusion of this episode when Picard's on the stand and Satie's accusing him of being a traitor is just some of the most powerful stuff. So I have to think about it. But if I were doing my TrekRanks of TNG, I think this would be number 1, if not in the top 5 of my favorite episodes.
You know, there are some words I've known since I was a schoolboy. With the first link, the chain is forged. The first speech censured, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Those words were uttered by Judge Aaron Satie as wisdom and warning. The first time any man's freedom is trodden on, we're all damaged. I fear that today...
How dare you! You who consort with Romulans!
A worthy number one on any list for sure. And this was mentioned in our courtroom showdowns, but not by me and not by you. So, yeah, it's a classic. Everyone's being unjustly accused. First, poor Simon Tarsus, and then, of course, Picard and the entire
Enterprise crew, basically.
Crew and everything he's ever done in his career. It's just awful when she starts like digging into some of the old storylines, which is awesome continuity, where they start talking about Data's Day and things.
Data's Day, but also like basically accusing him, like, do you still ever feel guilt for all the death you caused at Wolf 359?
Yeah, I mean, shut up. Ross, what's your take on the drumhead? This is fantastic.
Obviously, a classic episode. And I did think about this in terms of Simon Tarsus and how he's treated because of his ethnicity or his heritage. And I don't like that particularly. And I suppose we're seeing shades of that now in Strange New Worlds with how people are treating Illyrians. So it wasn't a nice, not a nice scenario, is it? But a perfect pick for this. And I'm glad it's come up. It's I just see that poor Simon Tarsus' unhappy face in that lonely chair in the middle of the room. Yeah.
And the amazing thing is how relevant this episode is today. It's literally more relevant than it was.
And seeing how it can corrupt good people, because for a large part of the episode, Worf starts buying.
Worf's all over, isn't he?
Yep. Not quite as bad as when he joined that right wing terrorist.
Well, that's just bad. That's just bad writing. But this, I could believe that he would become zealous enough where it would overcloud his judgment
and caught up in it.
Exactly.
The Enterprise conspiracy of it.
Brilliant. Okay, Ross, what's your number 2 pick?
So following on a serious one with another serious one. No UHC card, no ID. # ice cold. And this is Dr. Teresa Ramirez being unjustly accused by ICE of not being a US citizen in Picard Series 2, Episodes 3 and 4, Assimilation and Watcher.
A recent one.
Yeah. She says it's the second time it's happened to her. And I just thought, my God, imagine living a life where just because of the person, the way you look and where you are, people can literally arrest you and you have to prove you're okay. I couldn't believe it. And when this was one of the first things I thought of when you said unjustly accused, because I just thought this is such an injustice that's happening today. And I was so glad this came up in Picard. I really felt that it was important that they talked about this and they showed it. And I was so glad they did. And so I definitely wanted to talk about it here as well. And I wanted to keep it serious. No pithy 5 words from me. It's important. So, yeah. And I chose Dr. Ramirez as well, because I thought if we're being horribly technical, Cristobal Reyes does not have a UHC card. He doesn't have ID. But it just made me feel horrible because he's still a citizen of Earth. He's still a human being. And I just don't like the way we separate borders and we do all this horrible stuff to each other. So I picked this pick.
I love this pick. It's hard for me to talk about this without getting angry, and you can hear my rant.
Definitely
on ICE and what an evil fucking organization they are on our Picard season 2 recap show. But yeah, this pick is fantastic. It's hard to not just get really sad and angry about the way. I mean, listen, Matt and I live in Southern California, LA, San Diego, and Matt lives in
Arizona
and Yuma. I mean, these are hotbeds for
border towns,
for border and a lot of awesome mixed cultures and all the great things about the U.S. where there's just this melting pot of people and cultures, and to see the way this department of our government, has
sadly, Jim. I mean, the fact that you and I live close to the border means we see this melting pot, but we also see the exact kind of ugliness that's in this episode.
Yeah, no, you definitely see it, and it's awful, but it was so well done here. It's so smart. And again, I said this, I went on a long rant about it, but the board deconstruction at the end of Picard season 2 is basically a statement on ice and what you just said, Ross, about labeling people as illegal. People aren't illegal, okay?
No.
That's not a thing. There's no illegal immigrants or illegal people. And the way that they set up the Borg as this new collective to embrace people, embrace the differences, and utilize those strengths to make your collective stronger instead of eliminating the weak, which is what the Borg has always done, and just assimilated to their end game. That's what ICE is. That's what ICE does. These people, all these cultures, should be celebrated and brought together to strengthen your communities and strengthen your cities. And instead, they're doing the opposite to hurt themselves, and they have no idea because they're bigots
and even
and racists.
Even what they're doing seems so detrimental to just grab somebody off the street and put them on a bus. What good will that do anyone? You're just creating a cycle where it's going to happen again.
And then you realize, they're doing this. Commenting on the stuff of today, they're doing this with people who were born here, but they happen to be of Mexican heritage. So they're dropping them off in a country that they have no connections to.
That is appalling in the worst possible way.
Yeah. And even for the people who aren't born here but have come here, it's horrendous the way they're treated. They should not be. And it's
can I just say though, as my input on this episode, I think this is great, Ross. I'm glad you picked it. It's so recent that it's just so important. And the aim of this show is for positivity. But to all those quote unquote fans who bitched and moaned about this being included and saying that Trek is woke these days, A, I don't think you're a real fan. And B, did we not just live through 4 years of this as Americans for people who are watching this, of kids and families being separated at the border by a cruel and unjust administration? So this is Star Trek doing what Star Trek does best.
Yeah, no doubt about
holding a mirror up to society and making us think about things and challenging us to change them.
And I love that they are able to show it here, both in the incredible metaphor of, again, the Borg reconstruction or deconstruction, but also in the time travel of here it actually is. This is not a metaphor. This is what's happening. These agents are coming in here and doing things that nobody should do to another person. So, okay, you're the best, Ross. Let's go to my round 2 pick. This will make a lot of people happy. So the last pick never been picked on TrekRanks. This pick has been chosen 19 times on TrekRanks. I looked it up. One of the most popular picks ever. We've already talked about it a couple of times. It's really the second time I've chosen it, but really it's the first time, because the first time I chose it, it was part of episode 47 in our Terran TrekRanks episode. So it's the first time that was, when we were talking about the search for boots, but I'm not going to talk about that this time, because I'm legitimately picking it as one of the great Unjustly Accused storylines in all of Trek. 5 words and a hashtag. Don't wait for the translation. Hashtag Repente the Day. It is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. The Kirk and McCoy part of this is one of the epic, not just Unjustly Accused storylines, one of the best storylines in Trek. It's fantastic. It's so much fun. It was groundbreaking and just, it was Trek earth-shattering when it came out in 91?
91, yeah.
Yeah, it was just such a movie. It was so big and huge, and it just felt incredible that, the scenes with the assassination of Gorkon, and then the tension on the bridge of what is happening. We can't figure it out. And then they go on board and they get arrested, and then they're standing trials. First time you're seeing Klingon trials in this way. Worf is there, so cool. And then, of course, Repente and the escape. And it's all just fantastic. And I love it. And, R.I.P. to David Warner, who just passed.
I know.
Great Chancellor Gorkon. So, yeah, I'm picking Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, for the first time, really. And I know it's your favorite movie, Matt. It's not mine. But I love this stuff. And we can all agree that this shit's amazing. Ross, what's your take on The Undiscovered Country.
So obviously, Undiscovered Country was on the roundabout list because it's the most prominent unjust accusation in all of Star Trek, and it's so well established. The courtroom, the massive gavel, Rura Penthe, the scenes at the end where they actually foil the assassination and they prove themselves. It's absolutely fantastic. And of course, it's not just the unjust accusation, it's everything that comes from an unjust accusation. The false imprisonment, the deceit, the need to prove yourself and demonstrate the falsity of the claim. So it's really nice that it takes it and just runs with it for the entire episode, the entire film. So of course, I love the Undiscovered Country. So I'm glad you picked it, and it's good for this.
I love it. It's perfect for this topic. Matt, any final comments on the Undiscovered Country? I know it's your favorite.
Yeah, it's my favorite. Yes, Trekkies, I put it above Star Trek II and Star Trek First Contact. I just love me a political thriller when it's done right. I mean, for me, there's this and Captain America Winter Soldier. It's just, I love it when the threat comes from within.
I love it. That's good.
And also, too, we don't talk about this enough. Great send off for the entire TOS cast.
Absolutely.
Underrated.
So good.
I'm hoping Star Trek Picard season 3 gives the TNG crew the send off that they deserve.
I think that's coming. Yeah.
But I just love this. I love this movie. It's my favorite.
Yep. The send off is a huge part of it. Really, really cool. Something that Next Gen didn't really get with Nemesis. So we'll see if that happens in Picard season 3. It's totally going to happen. I can't wait. Okay, round 1. Matt, what's your pick?
Begin round 1.
Okay, so this is the first episode that came to mind, and thank God it was something that I hadn't picked because now I get to talk about it because it's an episode that I think is it's so underrated and so forgotten because it's sandwiched in the middle of a run of great episodes. But it's something that I think every Trekkie needs to check out again. And of course, my number one, as much as I love all the new series and everything else, I'm still a Deep Space Nine guy at heart. So my number one is a DS9 episode, 5 words and a hashtag. It was Odo all along, hashtag Gestapo Odo. This is the season 5 episode, Things Past. And if you don't, if you don't remember Things Past, this is the episode where Sisko, Garrick, Jadzia, and Odo are forced to relive a memory of Odo's, in which he let his overzealousness for justice lead him to accuse 3 Bajorans of trying to assassinate Gul Dukat. And it turns out that they were all innocent, but that didn't stop him, and those 3 were shot on the promenade.
Damn, son, that's a great pick. I did not think of it.
It's one of my favorite flashback episodes of DS9 to the Terok Nor era. And like I said, I think it's just sandwiched because it's the beginning of season 5, and season 5 is a brilliant season of Deep Space Nine. And this comes like shortly after Trials and Tribulations, and it comes right before the Dominion War buildup stuff. So I don't think people remember this episode, but if you're talking about Unjustly Accused and like some deep personal drama, this is an episode that can't be missed.
I love anytime there's a throwback to Terok Nor. So, and you're right, this episode gets kind of stuck in the middle of all these huge, epic Deep Space Nine moments. So it does a little bit get forgotten. But still a popular episode and perfect for this. Just an amazing pick. It's really powerful when you start figuring out what's happening with that. Odo made a huge mistake early on that he has to live with and learn from.
Not only that, but like he's forced to see him do it again, and it has to end with him watching the 3 people get shot again.
Yeah, it's brutal. Ross, what's your take?
I mean, this is a dark number 1, isn't it? This might be the only pick where the false accusation isn't followed by some sort of redemption or proof that it's not the case. The 3 poor guys are falsely accused, and then they are unjustly executed. My goodness,
they're not coming back.
No, and I mean, there's not much positive to say about it, is there? It's a great episode, but man, it's a dark episode, and having to to live it once and deal with it is a psychological burden. To watch it again and to have the people you know now witness your darkest mistake. Yeah. How do you even get over that, man? That's a huge thing.
It's sad, but like, how often do you hear about stories where, people are convicted and then executed here, and then years later they find DNA or some sort of evidence that would have been exculpatory?
Yeah, absolutely.
Way too often. Way too often. Okay. Wow, powerful stuff. I love it. Ross, what's your number one pick?
Okay. Genesis genius generates groundless grievance. # completely irregular. This is from The Wrath of Khan, where the Genesis scientists are accusing Kirk of stealing their device, and then it escalates to the point where David Marcus is accusing Kirk of killing the members of the regular crew, and he attacks Kirk with a knife. Of course, Kirk fends him off easily, and Carol Marcus diffuses the situation by explaining that Kirk definitely did not kill everybody aboard regular station, but obviously something mysterious is going wrong. But the regular crew are absolutely up in arms about the fact that Genesis has been taken away. They accuse the Starfleet of being a military organization that does not care about science. And then, of course, they're treated horribly by Khan under the guise of being a Federation starship. But it's the fact they accuse Kirk of it. And, of course, Kirk would never do something like that, especially not to Carol Marcus and new relative David Marcus, who we didn't know. Amazing, really strong stuff. And it's so immediately energetic and powerful. And then you've got the whole Kirk's introspection and him sort of really wishing he'd knew his son better. I watched it the whole thing today. So it was really good. But it's powerful stuff and I really enjoyed it.
I mean, it is quite a leap from David Marcus to accuse Kirk of having killed everybody.
Yeah, but I mean, is this built on the idea that he doesn't trust Kirk? I mean, does he? Yeah, I don't think he knows that Kirk is his father until later on. Point. Yeah,
he thinks he's the Boy Scout that's used to date.
Yeah, exactly.
He also doesn't trust Starfleet as the military, because that's exactly what he says. Right. Scientists are always pawns of the military.
That's it.
It's still quite a leap to think he killed everybody.
Right? Yeah. No. But, I absolutely agree.
But this is great. He's unjustly accusing Kirk. Kirk's getting unjustly accused everywhere.
I just got to say, for a project that was supposed to spawn life, Genesis is the source of so many false accusations when you think about it, because not just the stuff that you mentioned, but in the next movie, the Klingons think they created it as a weapon, which it can be used as a weapon, but that's not why they created it. So I just I think it's a brilliant pick with the stuff that you picked out, Ross. But I just think the Genesis storyline in particular is just about this kind of corruption of this thing that was supposed to be something beautiful.
Yeah, you're so right.
Ross, it takes a special pick to make The Wrath of Khan a hugely deep cut reference, because this is a deep cut pick for The Wrath of Khan. I love it so much. Awesome. Okay, let's close it out with my round one pick. I don't do this a lot. I've done it a few times. I know people think I do it a lot. I've done it maybe 3 or 4 times. I thought Tribunal was going to be picked. So that's my number one episode. But I said, I'm going to have a backup just in case Tribunal goes off the board, because there were so many other episodes on my secondary system. And this was going to be my toughest cut. But now I'm moving it into my number one spot. And I think it is quite appropriate for this topic and what we have coming up. 5 words and a hashtag. Pac-Led Planet goes boom boom. Hashtag Captain Freeman frame job. And it is first contact. It's the reason we're doing this topic.
Here.
I can't believe we haven't mentioned it already.
It's Captain Freeman getting framed for this Pac-Led attack. And it's a fantastic cliffhanger. It comes out of nowhere in an amazing masterpiece of an episode with all the great action and setup. And then all of a sudden you've got this Starfleet security. They arrest Freeman and you realize, oh shit, they've been there's been stuff going on with this bomb and the Packlids throughout this whole season. And now Freeman's getting framed for this thing. Really, really well done, tying it back to like the Spy Humongous and Webster is just perfect. The main reason I wasn't going to pick it is because we just don't know yet how it's going to play out in season 3, which the first episode is Grounded, which looks like an episode where the Cerritos are going to where the crew's going to steal the Cerritos out of dry dock. Because I can't wait.
They're going to pull a Star Trek 3, which is
this is going to be
awesome.
Great. So I'm picking first contact. You've already picked second contact, Ross. So I think that's appropriate. What's your take on this one, Ross?
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, this is the reason we're here, isn't it? It's this episode is bringing us all together right now. I absolutely love this as a cliffhanger ending. I thought it was. I think the first 2 seasons, the finales, the couple of episodes leading up to the finale, have been so well done and create such a sense of like movement and tension. And then to know that they're going to carry it on in the next series, and this hasn't finished. It was so clever and so well done. But also to base it on, she expected to be getting a promotion. She thought she was going to be climbing the ladder, and everyone's there to see her not get a promotion, but in fact get arrested. It's horrible and amazing. I love it.
Even to the point where Boimler references that at the start of the episode, where he's like, she's going to get a promotion so we can all stand in the hallway and salute her. And she's walking off. And then later, it's like they're all standing in the hallway and she's getting escorted off. Matt, what's your take on Captain Freeman and Packlet Planet?
This is great. I love it. By the way, like Star Trek has kind of lately been on a roll of ending their episodes with someone getting arrested, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's been a few of those.
Between this and Strange New Worlds. But no, this is great. And like you said, it's the reason we're here. I'm so excited from the new season. It's going to be awesome. And can I just say too, is this has nothing to do with the unjust accusation, but I love the fact that this episode gives us some justice for Sonia Gomez to come back, to go from, an ensign spilling hot chocolate all over Picard and being nervous as hell to being in the command of her own ship where, she gets into a dilemma, but she's not shaken like she would have been early on.
Oh, she's a great captain.
The fact that they got Leisha Neff to come back, it was just perfect.
Yeah.
I didn't see though whether she had a lid on her cup though. I didn't see whether she learned that lesson. I can't remember.
Good question. We'll have to look that up. I love it. This is fantastic episode. All right. Amazing stuff. Let's get into our secondary systems.
Let's see what you can do with the secondary systems.
Matt, anything you want to rattle off real quick?
I've got one big secondary system, and it's something that I thought of as we were sitting here. And I guess it's better as a secondary system because it's not really an accusation, but it's sort of a revelation that's ends up being unjust. And it's, I guess my 5 I don't have a hashtag, but my 5 words would be her, a Cardassian, no way. It would be DS9's Second Skin, where they do, if you haven't seen all of Deep Space Nine, if you're watching it for the first time back in the 90s, they do such a good job of almost making you think that the story could be true and that Kira could actually be a Cardassian.
More than almost.
Yeah.
It was like, what is this happening? This is happening.
They could have explored this further and twisted it even more if they'd wanted.
I actually think I read behind the scenes that they actually wanted this to be true, but they were held back by the standards at the time. But that doesn't stop this from being, so she's unjustly accused, quote unquote, of being a Cardassian, but they really almost make you believe it.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I love it. Okay, Ross, any episodes you want to rattle off?
So I had a few voyages. I had Harry and Paris in the chute, and they were accused of bombing some recreational facility. Yes. Janeway and the crew in Live Fast and Prosper, they're accused of stealing, I think, Bolamite. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And I had Living Witness. Data in Clues is accused of covering up some sort of mystery, which he is. But he's doing
it's not unjustly.
Yeah, sort of meets your criteria from earlier on.
Yeah.
A big one for me was the Xindi and their belief that Earth is going to somehow destroy the future.
That's a big.
That is a huge one.
Hashtag fear builders. They were very close on my list.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's so good.
Of course, Star Trek 6. Obviously, that was a good choice.
Yeah.
I think that's me.
Okay, I've got a few. A couple that I wanted to pick a lot of these. So First, a couple from Voyager, Vis-a-Vis.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unjustly accused folks in that one. That's the body swapping one with Steth, and it's a pretty clever episode. And then Retrospect, which is the one where
controversial,
is the repressed memories. It's kind of problematic in its storytelling. It hasn't really aged well, but definitely poor Coven is getting unjustly accused and he dies.
Right.
I always kind of forget at the end, like, oh shit, this guy
commits suicide basically.
Yeah, I mean, he was just too afraid to go back, so he pushed it to the limit and died. Sad. Random Thoughts is one that's one. She's not unjustly accused, right? She did think those violent thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was
the accusation is not really very just, is it?
Yeah. So I didn't pick that one. And then she wasn't falsely accused, she was unjustly accused. And then of course I would have picked Court Martial, but I just picked it a couple of episodes ago. That to me is the quintessential unjustly accused, as is Wolf in the Fold. The episode Dax from Deep Space Nine is another one where it's like unjustly accused, but not really falsely accused, because there's some nuance there, as with The Collaborator, which is another one where unjustly accused, but he actually did it. And then Canamar from Enterprise, where Trip and Archer get arrested for smuggling. And okay, my last one, let's just say my shout out, which I would have picked it because it's my all-time favorite episodes of TNG. It's the whole Worf discommendation arc, Sins of the Father, all the way through Redemption. I've picked it 1,000 times on TrekRanks, so I couldn't pick it again, but wanted to at least reference it. So, okay. Awesome. Fantastic topic. I knew we'd get some cool deep cut picks and some big ones.
Actually, you know what, Jim? We'll leave this on a happy note, because we've picked a lot of dark episodes this time, but I'll throw in House of Court for good measure, because he's accused of killing the Klingon.
Is he even? But he did kill him.
He did, but
there's no fault. He unjustly sold it.
Yes, and then gets accused by way of his lies. So it's a little
somewhere in there. There's an unjust.
It's a little finessing, but I wanted to, I wanted to end this on a happy note. And who doesn't love the scene of Quark trying to explain an Excel spreadsheet to a bunch of Klingons?
By the way, that episode just gets better every time you see it. Absolutely masterpiece. Okay, let's get into our regeneration cycle. Go through a recap of our pick, and I'll relay some stats.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Okay, Matt and Ross, just recap your picks really quick. Matt, what do you got?
So number 5 was Judgment from Enterprise. Number 4, The Voyager Conspiracy from Voyager. Number 3, Remembrance / Star Trek Picard Season 1 as a whole. Number 2, TNG's The Drumhead. And number 1, DS9's Things Past.
I love it. You spread it around. 5 different series picked: Enterprise, Voyager, Picard, TNG, and Deep Space Nine. Ross, how about you recap your picks?
So my number 5 was Lower Decks, Episode 1, Second Contact. Number 4 was Deep Space Nine's Tribunal. Number 3, Voyager's Scientific Method. Number 2 was Picard's Series 2, 3, and 4, Assimilation and Watcher. And number 1 was The Wrath of Khan.
Fantastic. So you also spread it around. You had Lower Decks, Picard, TOS, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. 5 different incarnations. Amazing. Okay, my picks: round 5, Voyagers, ex post facto. Round 4 was Enterprise's Detained. Round 3, also from Voyager, Living Witness. Round 2 pick was from TOS, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. And my number 1 pick was First Contact from Lower Decks. So I had 2 from Voyager and then 1 each from Enterprise, TOS, and Lower Decks. So if we break this down, we had basically, I didn't keep too many stats, no duplicates. There were 6 picks that were basically courtroom type episodes or decisions that kind of led to everything. And maybe 7 if you include Freeman kind of getting formally accused. Yeah, I would count that. So that's 7. And then we spread it around really well here. So we had one from TNG, and then 2 each from 5 different series: TOS, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Picard, and Lower Decks. And then Voyager led the way with 4 picks. So we really covered it well with 7 different series shown.
No, it used to be so easy to cover everything, Jim, when there were only 5 series. And
I know.
Now we have 10?
It's amazing that there's 12 series now. It's when you include short treks and TA and the animated series. So yeah, it's amazing. When we started TrekRanks, there was only 5, 6, including the animated series, which actually wasn't really counted when TrekRanks started, but now is fully counted because it's complicated, people. You can hit me up on Twitter and we can talk about it. Okay, here we go. We have once again been hit by temporal distortion, so before we get apart, it's time to hear.
The temporal distortions are fracturing space-time throughout the ship.
Cause?
Unknown.
Oh, we know the cause, Mr. Tuvok. It's all the amazing feedback we continue to receive from our listeners here at TrekRanks, and this week's temporal distortion has sent us back to episode 131 and our top 5 one-off guest stars. We got a couple of voicemails for this topic, a really popular show. And this one is from friend of the show, Patrick Carlin, who is on Twitter at PJC4774. And I love these picks, so listen to his voicemail.
Hey, TrekRanks, this is Patrick Carlin, a.k.a. PJC4774 on Twitter, and I've got a list for episode 131, top 5 one-off guest stars. Number 5, 5 words. It will be our secret. Hashtag your language has always been most difficult for me. Yes. Joanne Linville's the Romulan commander and TOS's The Enterprise incident. The Romulans are my favorite Trek aliens. They have been right from the first time I saw Balance of Terror. So, everything I can get about them. And her portrayal, top notch. Just like strong and authoritative in every way. Number 4, 5 words. They say there's no devil. Hashtag he didn't die for nothing. Yes, William Wyndham as Commodore Decker, and again, TOS is the Doomsday Machine. Again, one of my favorite episodes of the original series. Yeah, his portrayal of just someone who's just been broken down and traumatized, but still rose to the occasion when it came to what took away what mattered to him the most. And fun fact, that episode was the first VHS tape I ever bought for myself. Number 3, and 5 words, mad enough to chew neutronium. Hashtag put him on ice. And this is, 2 from the same episode because I can't choose just one from this one because they're both so great. Anthony Caruso as Bella Oxnick and Vic Tayback as Jojo Kracko, and TOS is a piece of the action. That's another of my top favorites. That was one that both me and my mom always enjoyed a lot because everything about the episode is just amazing. Especially when Kirk realizes, the best way to deal with them is just to act like them. So he's just so over the top. I love it. Number 2, 5 word, polarization axis of the windows. Hashtag Prax. Mark Harrellick as Kashyyyk in Voyager's Counterpoint. Again, one of my favorite episodes. Him and the cat and mouse game between him and Jane Lynn, and how she just beautifully turns it all back on him. And again, terrifically done episode. And finally, number 1, I have 5 words and I have 2 hashtags. 5 words, same old bag of tricks. Hashtag, you are not Feklar. And the Advocate refrained from making her opponent disappear. Yes, Marta Dubois is Ardra and TNG's Devil's Due. Again, that's just, her portrayal is just absolutely amazing. She's just so deliciously over the top, oily, just amazing. And again, that's another of my mom's mutual favorite episodes. We always enjoyed watching that one together. When Picard is thoroughly relishing taking her down with every bit of much as flourish as she used earlier on. And I've got one secondary. Richard Kind is the Doppler ambassador in the Lower Decks episode of Embarrassment of Doppler. Just really couldn't have picked anyone better to voice that character. You're telling the whole ship about us? Ah! All right, thank you.
Okay, amazing list there from Patrick. He had a lot of TOS picks with Joanne Linville from Day of the Dove, which is awesome. William Wyndham, Doomsday Machine, so good. Plus, I loved his secondary system pick. He had a great impersonation of Richard Kind as the Doppler ambassador. Nice job, Patrick. Really good impersonation. All right. Awesome. Those picks more than enough to clear ourselves from this week's temporal distortion. So as always, I want to thank everyone for all the great responses to the TrekRanks podcast. Keep your lists coming to me at TrekRanks on Twitter so we can retweet them, but we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 unjustly accused storylines or a list from any of our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527, or you can just record it and then send me a DM. We can link up that way as well if that's easier. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we are doing a very special episode in memory of the great Nichelle Nichols. It's our top 5 Uhura episodes or moments. And obviously it's the perfect time for that. We tragically lost her recently. But, it's been a celebration. It's just been amazing to see the fact that no one, everybody loves her. It's just unilateral. It's kind of amazing. And it's really fascinating to me that this has come, right after we really got our first full season of Uhura in action in Strange New Worlds. So it's really adding a lot to the foundation created by Nichelle Nichols. So really, really, I can't wait to record this episode. So Matt and Ross, if you had to choose one Uhura episode or moment, what would that be off the top of your head? Matt?
God, so I'll try to stick with the Nichelle Nichols moment because I feel that's only fair. She didn't get a whole lot of action in the original series, and I'm sure that this moment is going to be picked by you or whoever comes on with you, but I just absolutely love it. The Mr. Adventure scene from Star Trek 3, where she finally gets to be kind of a badass.
That is one of the big action moments. It's amazing that there's not a lot of, obviously there's not a lot of Uhura episodes, quote unquote, in TOS, but there are so many powerful moments where it's like, holy crap, she really owned that moment in that scene, even though it wasn't about her. It's so cool. But Mr. Adventure, obviously that's, no way that one doesn't come up. Classic. Ross, what's your take? What's your pick?
I think for me, it's the scene in the naked time where she's grabbed by Sulu and he says, "Come with me, fair maiden." And she says, "Sorry, neither," sort of shoves him out of the way. It's hilarious. You could write that line today and people would think it was amazing. And she had it. She had it there 60 years ago.
That, you're right. That's a great way to frame it. That line would be cutting edge and dynamic and just blow Twitter up today.
Yeah.
And it was from 1966. That's incredible. That's absolutely staggering. I love it. Okay. Looking forward to that one. It's going to be awesome. All right. So before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to Matt Hansen and Ross Webster. It was great having you guys on the show.
I was wondering if you could show me how to access these subspace communications logs.
And we're going to do that right now, Mr. Neelix. So any final Trek subspace communications either one of you guys want to relay before we depart? Matt.
Just thank you so much, Jim, for having me on. It's so much fun every time you have me on. And yeah, if you want to talk with me more, look out for me on Twitter at mhansen0207, HANSEN. And if you like hearing my voice, which I can't imagine you do, but if you do, I now do a monthly podcast with my former Upper Pylon 2 castmate, Matthew Sponsky, called the Matt and Matt TCM Challenge, where we basically pick a movie at random from the TCM list of the month and we talk about it.
Ooh, awesome. I didn't even know about that. That's fantastic. Tweet about that more, man, so I don't miss it. Okay, Ross, thanks for coming back on, buddy.
Not a problem. Very enjoyable. Nice to meet you, Matt.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, and you can catch me on Twitter at STRTRK1701. And I also have a podcast, and you can listen to the sound of my mellifluous voice at SnapTrek, where we compare 2 episodes of Star Trek against each other.
So everyone's going to be waiting for that ex post facto versus a matter of perspective.
Oh, it's coming.
Right?
It's coming.
Come on, let's do it.
On the list.
Okay, and finally, I want to thank everyone again for engaging with us here on episode 141 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
I have orders to arrest you, Mr. O'Brien.
Arrest?
Search the ship.
What are the charges?
You have the right to refuse to answer questions, but such refusal may be construed as a sign of guilt.
I demand to know what I'm being accused of.
You deny all knowledge of this crime, then?
How the hell am I supposed to deny something when I don't know what you're talking about?
So you do not deny all knowledge?
We are Federation citizens, and we have rights.
Yes, yes. All your rights, as defined by Cardassian articles of jurisprudence, will be protected.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
Human, officer of the Federation Starfleet, has been found guilty of aiding and abetting seditious acts against the state. The sentence is death. Let the trial begin.